why was it Canada? Like, why not Australia? Why not some other country in Africa? Why not the US?
Honestly, I have no idea. For my husband, I know he actually had a conversation with God when he was 17 years old,
Mm.
where he had seen this beautiful scenery that was the lake and the snow-capped mountains, and all it said at the bottom of the image was Canada. Didn't give a specific location in Canada. And he had a little prayer conversation and he asked God, I wanted to go there. And he heard God tell him immediately, if you're obedient to me, I will take you there. So
Hey everyone, and welcome to Immigrants of Canada, a show that features immigrant stories of hope, struggle, victory, and everything in between. I'm your host, Suzette Smith, and today I'm chatting with my friend Sheena Jorritsma, who's from South Africa. Hi Sheena, welcome to Immigrants of Canada.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Suzette.
Thanks for being here today. What do you think about this extreme cold weather that we're having?
To say that I love it would not be true. I love the winters. In fact, today's a redeeming day. It's nice and sunny outside, and that I love. Quiet, 20 below, lots of sunshine. When the snow looks like it's got diamonds on the ground, that's my favorite. But the extreme cold has been a long haul for the last week.
Yeah, I agree. And very much different than what you'd be used to in South Africa, I'm assuming.
Very. We'd have a lot more sunny days, a lot more rain than no snow, practically none. So,
and that's in the winter time.
Yes. And it depends, just like in Canada, you have different types of winter. We have different types of winter in South Africa. And BC, it will rain a lot on the coast. And where I'm from, Knysna, South Africa, it rains a lot in the winter as well.
Okay. Is that on the east side, west side, north, south?
Very close to the middle of South Africa, sort of just right on the coast. There's nothing between Knysna and the South Pole.
Okay. That's very cool. How far is that from Cape Town? That's kind of the only city that I'm super aware of in South Africa. So how far would that be from that city?
It is about 5 hours east of Cape Town.
Okay.
Along
really
the coastline.
Wow. That's awesome. So could you tell us some more about South Africa? Like, what was it like to grow up there?
I actually grew up in a town called Hermanus that is just about an hour or so east of Cape Town, and very, very pretty, absolutely gorgeous. You've got mountains, you've got trees, you've got the beach, white sandy beaches.
Wow.
You have the southern right whale that comes and calves every year in around September time in the spring.
Mm-hmm.
So after the winter, you've got all these beautiful daisies that pop up just everywhere, white daisies everywhere. Wow. And there's a town crier. I'm not too sure if he's still there, but he was the world's one and only whale crier. And he blows on a horn made of seaweed to let you know that the whales are in the bay. And you can get right up close to the whales on a lookout point that you're literally just standing right above them. You can't even get that close to them legally, on a boat or something. So very, very beautiful place.
Wow. You could probably see the barnacles on them, I'm assuming, right?
Yes, you can.
Really?
Yeah.
So awesome.
You see them jumping right out of the ocean, although in my whole life of living in South Africa, I never got to witness that. They did it for the tourists, but I, as a local, did not witness the whales do that. I got the tail flapping action, but I did not see them come out.
Maybe one day. Maybe one
Maybe one
day.
day.
Yeah, that's so cool. Um, so when did you move to I'm sorry, what was the name of the city that you mentioned earlier?
Nice.
Nisar? Nizer.
Nice. So I moved there when I was about 15.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, spent the first sort of bit of my life in Hermanus, then moved to Neisner when I was 15, and then moved to a city across the country, Johannesburg, and spent 3 years there and then moved to Canada. So I've been a coastal girl my whole life.
Yeah.
It was very weird moving to Johannesburg where I didn't have an ocean shoreline in front of me. You know, that
Yeah.
took a lot of used to, but now being in Alberta, I do not have an ocean shoreline, so I got used to it.
Yeah. It prepped you.
It
Instead, it's more likely that you'd have a mountain view, but yeah,
yes,
not every city in Edmonton has that mountain view and or sorry, that not every city in Alberta has that mountain view. So
right, right.
yeah, it's different. Um, so what were you doing in South Africa growing up? What kind of work did you do? What kind of things did you like to do there?
I had a variety of different jobs. um, so I did everything from working in a jewelry store that sold diamonds and tanzanites and gold, and did that because I can speak German, and then moved to working in an accounting office as a secretary and receptionist, and then I moved to working in not-for-profit, where I worked for an international organization called Youth for Christ,
Okay.
and worked for them for a number of years in South Africa, and then later on here in Canada.
Mm. So lots of different types of jobs then.
Yes, not
Yeah.
one focused career path, I must say.
Very versatile. Do you think that prepped you adequately for coming to Canada?
I think it did. There was a sort of tenacity to do something and find something to do,
Hmm.
um, to make yourself fit into what you need to do so that you can be successful in something.
Right.
So buckle down, work at what you need to work at, learn what you need to learn so that you can succeed where you are. So
Hmm. What is the mindset like in South Africa? Do people value work over family, or are they more family oriented? I just kind of always wonder about that in different cultures.
So that would be a relatively tricky question to answer in terms of the fact that we have so many cultures in South
Mm.
Africa.
Okay.
We're a country with 11 official languages, and so there are many different cultures inside South Africa. There is some things that unify us sort of across the board. Our barbecues, which are a braai. It doesn't matter what sort of culture you have or ethnic background, the braai is the unifying barbecue that brings everyone together. But I'd say for a lot of people, um, education or tertiary secondary education is not available, or it's not as easy to come by. So for the majority, a lot of people can't rely on an education to get them somewhere. They have to just really fight to learn something, become entrepreneurial, work hard at the bottom of a job, and show tenacity and climb that ladder. So I think that can create a bit of a problem for families sometimes because, a lot of people don't just walk into a job that they find really is providing for their family. So oftentimes we have people who will leave their kids with their parents so they can go and like be the breadwinners now of the family. So it's a different feel, definitely. There's a lot of hard work and grind. so that you can get somewhere, so that hopefully your kid one day can go to university when you couldn't. So, yeah,
Mm,
that does impact the way that we do family.
yeah. And it's interesting, you said that there are 11 official languages?
Yes.
So what are
Yeah.
they? Because I used to think that it was just Afrikaans and English, but what's another one?
All right. So I'm going to just, for the record, butcher this and embarrass myself tremendously. So there's Xhosa, which I'm not pronouncing properly, Zulu, Venda, Sotho, South Sotho, and I'm going to forget some of them. So I'm going to make a horrible mess. But all our First Nations peoples, it's all their languages.
I
So
see.
um, English, obviously, coming from the UK, and Afrikaans being a derivative of when the Netherlands was involved in the country.
Mhm.
So those being the sort of imported languages, but definitely all our first languages are First Nations languages are official languages, which is really really quite lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a sense of unity then with all these official languages and different cultures? Is there still a sense of unity among the country?
Um, I think that there was a time where there was.
Mm,
It's a little harder now. When our president Nelson Mandela came into power many years ago, um, he had this tremendous, amongst other things, a tremendous drive to really unify the country
mhm.
and bring lots of people from different backgrounds, different headspaces together. And that really was a very beautiful time in our country. We turned from a lot of exclusion to a lot of inclusion.
Yeah.
But some of that has been lost a little bit as different presidents might have had different focuses. So, although the languages might appear that they would not unify people, there was a phrase coined South Africa, the Rainbow Nation, and they actually changed the flag of South Africa to have multiple colors
Hmm.
so that we actually were very intentional in celebrating the diversity. So the diversity was not a hindrance. There was a big drive to say, I really celebrate your culture. Teach me words, teach me things. So there was a lot of sharing, a lot of giving and taking, that was really beautiful. Some of that's been dampened a little bit, but again, it's up to individuals to really keep that alive.
Yeah. Did you like how that was in South Africa, that they celebrated diversity that way?
I did.
Yeah.
I think it was harder maybe for some people in an older generation than me,
Okay.
um, because I came in, apartheid had been abolished when I was a little girl. So, um, obviously there were remnants and there was a tide that needed to turn after apartheid was in fact abolished. But I I spent most of my life, particularly the part where you're thinking for yourself, even as a teenager and as an adult, in the Rainbow Nation. So for me, that was great. I find some people, that might have been harder, where they were taught to sort of rather stick to their own, stick to what they know.
Right.
That might have been a harder transition, but for me, that was really lovely. I absolutely loved it. So,
Mm. Do you mind talking a little bit about the apartheid? I mean, for those viewers who might not know what the apartheid was, can you just kind of summarize, maybe?
so that was a very unfortunate point in our history. We were part of the Commonwealth at the time,
Mhm.
and well, before apartheid, really. There was a transitional space, sort of in the early years of the 19th century. The 20th century. And we actually, not a lot of people know this, but Gandhi himself practiced as a lawyer in South Africa. He was in school in South Africa, experienced a little bit of the transitional space of the racism. He was a little bit, India being part of the Commonwealth at the time, they hadn't achieved independence yet, obviously, because his life was the turning point for that. But there was a bit of a nasty turn in our history, and then we got segregation, where it wasn't a slave trade, anything like that, but it was the horrible business of Black people and white people being apart from each other. But it was more than just Black and white people. It was any persons of any color.
Right.
So we have a very large East Indian population, and it was interracial marriages were illegal. So it didn't matter if it wasn't just Black and white. It was a Black person can't marry an Indian person. There were no cross interracial things allowed. People had to get certificates to attend functions. It was a very brutal time. Lots of uprising, political unrest, obviously people oppressing, doing horrible things, people trying to rebel, doing horrible things, everybody just trying to be heard. And we had, after the South Africa left the Commonwealth, the Afrikaner nationalism really rose to the fore. And they were a people group that had previously been very oppressed by the UK, a good 100 years prior to that. And so that was almost like this is our turn now kind of thing.
Yeah.
And with great respect to these people, they had a history of being sort of kicked to the side, but now, in their wanting to stand up and have dignity, it caused a decline of dignity for other people groups. A severe decline of dignity. And so in 1994, apartheid was abolished. President Nelson Mandela had been in prison for 27 years, and he was set free and eventually elected as the first president of color in South Africa. And he was a really wonderful president.
Wow.
It was too bad he couldn't be there longer. He really had a very good heart.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you for sharing about the apartheid. I feel like sometimes we've heard about it, maybe in school, but we don't go so in depth with learning more about it. So Thank you for sharing. So, you grew up in this very diverse environment. You grew up working a lot of different types of jobs, gaining all these different types of skills, moving around from city to city. So what was it that led you and your husband and your family essentially to Canada?
We had, like I said earlier, moved to Johannesburg, and that was a move that, you never know. You go into it thinking the best, but it wasn't the greatest move. Our kids cried every day. They missed their friends. We didn't know, how to really integrate, try to make the best of it. And there were times when we'd talk. August and I would, he would offer, should we move back to Knysna? Should we move to Cape Town? Should we move here, there, and everywhere? And I just sort of, nothing resonated. And he was all out of options one day because he'd just about mentioned moving to Timbuktu, we'll go anywhere you want. And thinking he'll save the least plausible location for last, he said, can we move to Canada? And I honestly, Suzette, I don't know what it was, but I looked him square in the eyes and with confidence, immediately I said, yes.
That probably took him by surprise. He was not expecting that.
Very much so. He didn't really know what to do with me. It's like he was preparing for the no and like, all right, fine. We'll move to the moon next. I don't know. But I just said yes. And so I had never been to Canada, neither had he, but his father actually lived here for a little bit. So he'd heard a lot about Canada. But I mean, I was completely ignorant of where the US ended and Canada began.
It's like one big clump sometimes. You can see that way, right?
So who knows why, but I said yes. And we actually had some friends who, from Neisner, our hometown, that had already moved to Canada, but not knowing, the Canadian geography very well. They mentioned having moved to Alberta, but we didn't know what that meant. It could have been a county for all we knew. So we knew we had some sort of friendly face in this vast land, but didn't really know anything, So we told our friends in 2013, we said, we'd like to move to Canada, and they were happy, we were happy, and it was great and joyous, but neither of us were doctors or lawyers. We hadn't had this great university degree, so we kind of figured, this might be a lot harder than we think to get into the country.
Yeah.
So we sort of fizzled on our gumption in 2013. 2014 rolled around in January. We made a New Year's resolution and we made a commitment to each other that if it takes us 5 years to become eligible to immigrate to Canada, that's what we will do. We will learn what we need to learn and we'll do what we need to do and we'll get it done. That was January, and by October we were here with our work permits, and so it was very
wow.
That was a whirlwind.
Yeah, totally.
Yes.
10 months later.
Yes, it was very quick.
How did it feel knowing that your life changed that quickly?
It was a bit surreal, honestly. There were so many sort of, hurdles to overcome, lots of things to apply for and different stages. So, once this stage had matured, then we have to apply for and pay for this stage. And each thing was like running a race with a hurdle that just grew in height.
Mm-hmm.
So, there were moments where, all it was just to put your head down and, keep going against the wind kind of feeling. To suddenly, oh my goodness, the work permits have been approved and not denied, and we get to get on a plane and move here. So it was quite surreal when it actually happened.
I imagine so. And so why was it Canada? Like, why not Australia? Why not some other country in Africa? Why not the US?
Honestly, I have no idea. For my husband, I know he actually had a conversation with God when he was 17 years old, where he had seen this beautiful scenery that was the lake and the snow-capped mountains, and all it said at the bottom of the image was Canada. Didn't give a specific location in Canada. And he had a little prayer conversation and he asked God, I want to go there. And he heard God tell him immediately, if you're obedient to me, I will take you there. So,
wow, cool.
He never told me any of that. And so years later, here we are, married with children, and, we now have 3 children, and suddenly, he finally has the courage to tell me, that, well, to ask if we can move to Canada, and only after I said yes did he tell me that story. So it was hidden deep in his heart. And for some reason, I just went with it, and I don't regret it at all. It's a very good move.
Wow. Did he ever? So clearly, that seemed like a desire of his. Did he ever forget about it as the years wore on, or did he always just keep that in a special place in his heart?
I think it was in that special place, but deep, deep, deep down.
Mm,
When you have a lot of dreams as a kid, some of us dream of going to the moon as an astronaut, and just I think some of that just fades to become, yeah, that's a desire, but I'm not prioritizing any steps towards it because my life is in a different direction now. So I think that would have been his headspace to just, you know, it's always there, but it's there's not any opportunity to take a step towards it
yeah.
until you ask your wife one day in the kitchen and she's just declined every moving location you've suggested and you've got one card left in your
Yeah.
pocket.
And you went with it. That's the thing. He wasn't expecting
Yes,
you. You totally caught him off guard. That's
I
the
did.
best.
I did, yeah. And I have no idea why.
That's yeah. Well, the climate, as we just started off this episode with. I mean, we're right now we just kind of uh, finished. We're on the tail end of a polar vortex,
Yeah.
so we're just coming out of it now. But for those who don't really like extreme weather, Canada, that can be a deterrent, right? In
Well, yeah, he absolutely, because he knows I don't like being cold. So it was really the last place he was going to suggest.
yeah, and the funny thing is, the vision that he had just happened to be Western Canada
Yes.
and specifically Alberta, and that is like, okay, I would argue that maybe Saskatchewan and Manitoba can get colder than Alberta in the winter. And my theory is because we've got like the protection of the mountains, sort of.
Right.
Um, but it can get pretty cold here in Alberta too. Like, let's not lie.
Yes. As we've just
So
experienced the last 2 weeks.
exactly. So yeah, so here you are. You guys are coming to Canada, and that happened within the span of 10 months.
Yeah.
What then? When you came to Canada, where did you land? What were the next steps?
So we literally, I think of these movies and I think of Titanic specifically when they arrive off the ship with their suitcases and the dog and everything. It was something similar, but greatly less grandiose by by every stretch of the imagination. We arrived here. We got rid of everything we owned. Basically, we just gave it away. We didn't want to be, trying to arrange for anything to be transported to Canada.
Right.
So we told the children they can have a stuffy each, and we each brought a suitcase of clothing and a backpack, and that was it. And we arrived with $200 in our bank account.
Wow. Okay. Lots of pressure then.
It was sink or swim, I tell you.
Yeah.
Very, very fortunately for us, our friends, we later on found out, precisely where they live, and Alberta started making sense, and we knew then that it's a province. And August and I both got work in Edmonton, and our friends were extremely gracious and generous, and they offered for us to come and stay with them for as long as we needed to get our feet on the ground. So we had to, just make do with life and learn how to do a lot of things.
Yeah.
Drive on a different side of the road being one of them. In snow.
Yeah.
Everything had to change. And we started out with a 1-year closed work permit, and then progressed to a 2-year open work permit, then progressed to permanent residency, and we are going to be applying for our citizenship soon. So that's
Wow.
very exciting.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So Can you explain the difference? What does it mean when you say a closed work permit versus an open work permit? Did I get that right?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So that's basically where both are classed as a temporary foreign worker or foreign temporary worker. I think it's temporary foreign worker is the official term, where you're just allowed to come and work. It's a visa that the immigration department gives you, allowing you to work for a specific employer. So obviously, any country would not want to just have um, lots of people coming for different reasons, just showing up. So when you are awarded a closed work permit, it's employer specific. So the government knows where you are, and there's a beginning and an end, and everything's very official, so that you don't have people taking advantage of things. And then he had to meet certain requirements. He challenged for him, and everybody's situation is different. But for August specifically, he had to challenge the Red Seal certification for his, as he's a journeyman carpenter.
Okay.
So he had to just challenge that certification here, and then he would get, based on doing that successfully, get an open work permit, which means that then he can work for anyone that he'd like to.
I see. Okay. And what challenges did August have to overcome then in challenging that red seal?
So it was done through Alberta Industry and Training, and they did all the certification here at NATE. He had to take a theoretical exam and a practical exam. So obviously, when you're learning, this is something we weren't prepared for, just how different the language is in Canada. We're all speaking English, but saying different things. So he had to learn. Well, another thing, everything in South Africa in the construction industry is measured in metric, and everything is measured in imperial here. So he didn't even know how to do that.
Oh no. So what did his coworkers think of him as he was like trying to learn everything?
I don't believe that they thought he was the real deal. On his first day at the job, he was asked, "So, are you even a real carpenter?" You will come across looking a bit silly when you can't say the same terms as everybody, and you only think in metric.
Yeah.
So he had no idea what a simple 2x4 is. He just looks at them blankly and doesn't know that that's a certain size of timber.
I
And when
see.
you don't know what that is, just a basic 2x4 timber, you really do not sound legitimate in any shape or form.
So like it was like he had to learn a new language then.
Absolutely, absolutely. He later on, once he was well versed in you know Canadian carpentry, he had some Irishmen come and join their crew, and they were sort of fresh off the boat as well, like we were at one point, and also just completely confused at what was going on, and he was able to translate, so they were able to pick it up a lot faster than he was initially.
Yeah. So
So
it's like he found camaraderie with the Irishman.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. There are a lot more terms I think that we have from the UK, and even their girlfriends. I remember having a chat with them and just listening to the hilarious things. One of the carpenter's girlfriends was a teacher, and she was talking about how she was telling her students to throw their used Kleenex in the bin. I couldn't understand why these little sweethearts were putting dirty Kleenexes into the toy box. I'd say a bin for the garbage. And then she had to learn, oh, well, I guess they really are just telling them, doing what I'm telling them to do, but I didn't mean to tell them to do that.
Aw.
So you can have these hilarious little faux pas along the way. You just have to keep a sense of humor about it and realize that, you know, what you might have seemed like you were in the know of how to do things, now it's it's a whole new world.
I
You just need to
totally.
be prepared to grow with it, you know?
Yeah. Was there anyone that accidentally got offended because of what you said or your husband said just because of that language barrier?
I think a lot of people, when they hear the accent, have been very gracious.
Okay.
Uh, you know, understanding that, you know, perhaps it is very clear that these are foreigners and, you know, aren't intentionally, you know, not with the program. But it can be tricky. Like a time when I was all flustered trying to take my youngest on a little car ride, and we had I just wanted to, you know, get a snack for her to eat. So we pulled up at Tim Hortons, and I asked for uh, a grilled cheese, a toasted cheese. Sorry, a toasted cheese. And she had no idea what I was saying. And my little one is crying and now turns to screaming in the back. And of course, I'm getting more flustered. And this poor lady is just trying her best to understand me through her little box that's already not clear. And
Yeah.
she is herself very clearly an immigrant as well. So it's her accent and my accent
Oh
and the
no.
wrong technology. And this is not going well. And
Oh
I had a
man.
memory lapse and didn't call it a grilled cheese, but called it a toasted cheese. And I couldn't understand why she's just not understanding me. But eventually it clicked into place, and I realized, if I just use the right terms, we might get somewhere.
The poor girl must have thought you meant literally a toasted piece of cheese.
Yes, I believe so. And for me, I don't have that visual image
Yeah.
because I very clearly have something in mind when I'm asking for toasted cheese. But if I ask a Canadian for a toasted cheese, I do get laughed at.
I'm still thinking about it right now. I know you told me this when we first met, this story, but I still think of the toasted cheese literally as you put the cheese on the grill and it's got these little grill marks and it kind of has this crunch when you bite into it. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's these sorts of moments where you're all flustered and it's just going badly. Afterwards can be a good laugh, and I think that's a very important part for us immigrants, is just to, through it all, through the stresses and the strains and all the new, is just try your best to keep a really good sense of humor.
Of course. That's the way to get through anything. Did the woman have a good laugh when you came to the window? Can you imagine if she actually gave you a piece of toasted cheese?
That would have been possibly infuriating for me, because my level of anxiety with having a screaming little one had really risen.
Yeah.
We didn't get that far. But yeah, that poor woman, she was just trying so hard to understand me. And it's already, I can just picture, you know, what it must be like to try to listen to people on your little headset through that box. And, you know,
Yeah.
it's already unclear. And now they're saying the wrong things and with an accent.
It's a recipe for disaster.
Exactly. That poor
Yeah.
lady.
Well, could you like at least drive away? Like I know that you had your kid was not happy, but at least when you drove away, did you have a good laugh about it at least?
I did. I realized, and I felt really like annoyed at myself now, you know, and just feeling, oh goodness, you know, because I mean, it was starting to become verbally clear that I was getting flustered, that she
Yeah.
was not understanding, and I'm thinking, what is so hard to understand about a toasted cheese? She can hear in my tone, I'm sure, that I was, becoming less than patient. Um, so I felt so silly afterwards. Thought,
It-
well, that really is all on me. I can just imagine what she's gone home to tell her family. That silly woman.
I got
Um,
asked the weirdest thing today. I got asked for a toasted cheese.
I bet she was asking her Canadian colleagues what a toasted cheese is, and they would have probably said they had no idea.
The manager would have been like, I don't
We don't
know.
serve that here.
Yeah. So other than, some language barrier from time to time and just kind of the aspect of finding work in a new country, what other challenges did you and your family face in even in getting your permanent resident card?
Well, it's a lot. The paperwork is quite a lot. One thing I'm so thankful for, even though we had to learn the new English terms here in Canada, at least we are English speaking. I do think of a lot of fellow immigrants who maybe are not, English would not be their first language. That could be so much harder.
Mm-hmm.
Great sense of bewilderment. So I think that was tremendous that once we sort of learned how to speak the speak, it was a lot easier. And for us, we have to, with everything, apply. So we had to apply once we had received our first open permit, work permit. We had to then apply to the province to receive a provincial nomination, where the province of Alberta actually nominates you for permanent residency.
Okay.
And then each stage is quite exhaustive with the paperwork. Obviously, the government's really trying to make sure that things are accurate. So it's very, very particular. It costs a lot of money. um, and I think that's a great challenge, because it's a tremendous amount of stress thinking and realizing, this lovely place that we live in, that's our home, is not really our home if we don't fully comply with everything. And these are quite significant things to comply with. If we miss the mark, then we could be in a lot of trouble. And so, particularly with August, he had to challenge that red seal, but he had the 12-month or 1 year closed work permit. But then with the sort of 2015, 2014, as the economy started to decline, they had to lay him off. So he's 3 months away from his, from completing his 12-month closed work permit.
Yeah.
He can't work for anybody else. It would be illegal.
Yeah.
He can't just go so we still had bills to pay and things to take care of. And he's got to write this, and take these exams. So that was very, very stressful. He was without work for 6 weeks. And then we found a company that would hire him. But obviously, legally now, we had to have the work permit changed for the remaining 6 weeks. It's all very complicated. But we had to have it changed to be employer specific to this new employer. So we had to go to the border at Coots and go through the US border and do what they call a flagpole, where you just drive around and sort of re-enter Canada, where you would then, it's not a guarantee that this will work. If the immigration officer finds something amiss, you're out.
Oh,
so
man.
It's quite scary, and it's all the children and it's everybody in the car. And so we had a lady and a gentleman who were quite particular. The gentleman was not the typical Canadian friendly person that we
Oh no.
celebrate.
Oh.
Um, he might not have had all the coffees that he would have liked to by the time that we had arrived on
Yeah.
his at his counter. And there was a female immigration officer with him, a counterpart who sort of took over the situation, but really grilled August. She checked on everything that she could to verify, including she had his bank account open in front of her and asked him to verify the precise amount in our checking account.
They can do that?
Apparently so. We just found that out. It was one way for her to verify that we are being truthful about who we are, apart from just having the necessary funds and paperwork all checked out. She was literally looking, she had opened up his bank account. And we had not provided the bank account to her. She pulled it up on, yes.
That's really invasive.
Yes, it was. My husband did sort of walk away feeling quite, she'd really had quite the poke around in our lives. And, you know, we are very understanding of the fact that the government cannot just allow, you know, any old person in, and they have to do due diligence. But that didn't feel,
it didn't feel right.
No, it didn't. It felt like an overreach of things, because we did have all the paperwork, we had everything, we had a massive file, you know, with all our things. And anyway, she was quite stern with August and said, you know, you do understand that you're going to have to come back here as soon as you've taken your test, and you better pass or I'm not giving you a 2-year open work permit. So yes, we do understand. We walked away with 6 weeks left on this closed work permit, and he had to take the tests. That in itself was very nerve-wracking. He failed his theoretical exam twice. Very stressful. Then he took his practical examination and then his theoretical a third time, because you only get 3 strikes.
Yeah.
Very grateful to say he did pass those 2.
Yeah.
And we drove right down with the paperwork, and we sort of left immediately, had to do that. And hilariously, at this random hour, random day, we have none other than Mr. Smiles himself serving us at the counter, ready to give us a whole nother whiplashing. And thank goodness this other immigration officer quickly came to the rescue and said, I do know this situation, I remember him. And although he seemed to remember us quite well himself. So we got our 2-year open work permit, and thank goodness didn't have to see him again. And in that time, as I said, we applied for the provincial nomination, we received that, and then applied for our permanent residency. And they changed the laws. Immigration decided to change things. So the fees were always $550 per adult. Children have a much lesser fee, but a $550 application fee per adult. And so we paid that, but then they changed things and decided to do what they call a right of acceptance fee, the right of permanent residence acceptance fee, which is a way to charge you a further $550 per adult. So essentially pay double. You pay to apply, and at the same time you pay to receive.
Is this how it always works, or was this just a special case for you guys?
No, it came in. It was never the case. And then it came in across the board, sort of at the time that we were doing it. So they are kind enough to say on their website as you apply that if you are denied permanent residence, they'll refund you. But that's quite a large amount to be out of pocket per adult.
Well, exactly, and especially if, as even in your own case, like, lots of immigrants come to Canada with not a lot of money.
Right,
So,
right. Everything
how?
that we had was sort of, paycheck to paycheck, living, you
Yeah,
know, paying the bills, putting a roof over the head, and still paying all these fees for immigration. So quite a process. But we were very excited when the documents finally came.
I
And
imagine.
yes,
Yeah.
got in the car, uh, raced down the 6 hours to get to Coots. And would you believe it, Mr. Smiles, at this random time again.
It's like a smaller version of that movie Groundhog Day with Bill
Yes,
Murray.
very much so. And I still said to August in the car, like, what are the chances that Mr. Smiles is going to be waiting for us?
I like how you have, like, his own designated name too, Mr. Smiles.
Yes, because he was anything but. And he still, it was 2 years later now, he still hadn't had enough coffee. So he was just as grumpy. Gave us an earful about, bothering him there. It wasn't the magical experience that that
Oh,
we were hoping for. He gave us our stamped papers, and he was very gnarly. So we kind of tucked our tail between our legs, and well, whoop whoop, everyone, we're permanent residents now.
welcome to Canada. Oh, Sheena, I'm so sorry you had to go through that.
There are so many people that would probably be a lovely representation in that gentleman's place, but we were not on the receiving end of other of his colleagues. Whatever it is that got him upset, well, it hadn't left. So hopefully for him, he's not so miserable anymore. But that did sort of sour the day. We
Mhm.
had to get a little place to stay. We stayed in a motel that I thought I'd booked a hotel just to make the experience even more fun. It was a motel, and I
Oh,
honestly thought I'd booked a hotel.
aw.
And it was like this kind of winter. It was in March,
Mhm.
and freezing cold. So we couldn't open any windows in this motel room. Clearly, the guests before us had hotboxed their cigarettes in there or something, because everything reeked of cigarettes.
Oh, no.
So we were in this dirty, dingy motel room, but just very happy that we finally had Canadian permanent residence.
Aw.
So, yeah.
During this whole ordeal, did you ever think, like, "Ah, this is so not worth it, like, we should just go back to South Africa," or were you very committed to seeing this through?
Very committed. Um, there was no going back. We had nothing to go back to. Um,
Mm,
and our reasons for pushing through with any hurdle, no matter how great or small, has always been the same. We want to have a better life for our kids.
right.
Um, and for us, that just hadn't, there wasn't a time where we thought, well, if we did a certain amount of things in South Africa, that would improve and we'd meet our goals in South Africa. So I think that really gave us a lot of, it's all or nothing. We're going for broke, has been our attitude the whole time.
Mm,
There is no going back. There's nothing to go back to. We have to make this work.
yeah.
So I can say with all confidence that the 3 years that we spent in Johannesburg, although we had a very tenacious attitude to make things work, it was a disaster. Like any move can be great or turn out to be awful at some point. And Johannesburg certainly didn't check any boxes for us, but Canada, all throughout, even with the trickiest moments, we wouldn't change it for anything. We would absolutely do it all again. So we're very, very thankful to be here.
Oh.
Very, very happy, and just can't believe it's been over 6 years that we've been in Canada. It's just we wouldn't want to be anywhere else. This is our home, and we're so happy here.
I'm so happy to hear that. When we were first chatting, you mentioned that there were miracles that you and your husband experienced. Do you mind sharing one of the miracles that happened?
One of them would definitely be how we found some work. After our New Year's resolution, we found out that there was this stream that the Canadian government had opened up to say that they were looking for certain tradespeople.
Okay.
And that's why immigration can be it's such a unique journey for everybody. Because the government will have different needs or different requirements, and they're constantly changing things, to be current. So we were looking for work, and I'd fixed up, updated Augie's resume, gotten it ready, and I started applying, but I'd never heard of these places before. I didn't know, and I was a bit nervous. In South Africa, we have a lot of sort of fraudulent situations, unfortunately, and I didn't know, am I applying to legitimate places or, so I'm just sitting there on my bed with the laptop and applied to a few places. I'd probably spent about 20 minutes. And there was one company that sort of stuck out because I remembered the name purely because there were two different positions that I applied on August's behalf for, and that's why the name rang a bell. And I slammed the laptop shut, and I just prayed. I said, God, please, this is like looking for a needle in a haystack. And I got nervous, I just thought, I don't even know what I'm doing. I need God to do something for me with this resume and show me where to go.
Yeah.
So a few minutes later, literally out of the blue, my South African friend who lives here, who we lived with, texts me and says, my husband works for this company called Stuart Olson. And I was amazed. I said, my goodness, I've just applied for two jobs there. So she said, hang on, let me just speak to him. So she chatted with him. He was standing in HR's office, the hiring manager for the whole company. And said, look, a friend of mine has just applied online and he's a qualified carpenter. You're looking for carpenters. And so she said, well, you know what, don't even worry about that because it's a generic email and just hundreds of applications go there. So I was able to have this resume emailed to my friend, who emailed it to her husband, who printed it off and hand delivered it to HR right there in a few minutes from me praying this prayer. And
wow. Incredible.
Yeah, it was just an absolute miracle. Like, again, one of those surreal moments, like, well, this is a very real hurdle, but wow, look at what God did,
He
just
came
so
through.
many situations like that,
Yeah. So after this is all said and done, what do you think about Canada itself? Like, what do you appreciate about it? What do you love about Canada?
Oh my goodness. That is a question with many answers. Number one, I mean, okay, let me not point, a value system to it. I think I'll just point from random things. I love mountains and trees, and my favorite is the Rocky Mountains. I love it. I love how vast Canada is. To give you just to inject this little fun fact in my answer, South Africa is half the size. Alberta is half the size of South Africa. So that's one province, and you've knocked out 9 in South Africa. So it's so huge. I just love how you can ride for hours and you're still in the same province, and it's just, there's no end to it. It's just, the beauty is breathtaking. The lakes are just incredible. I love how free it is in so many ways. Of course, the world is not very free right now. We've all got to be
right,
and keeping safe. But under normal circumstances, just being able to go outside. Canada was the first time, or being in Canada was the first time that my kids were able to play with neighborhood kids outside. In the street, like in our little cul-de-sac, because South Africa has, unfortunately, a lot of crime. So you don't let your children play in the street with neighbors. So just, there are a lot of really good people here, people who are just trying to make an honest living. And we so appreciate that. We appreciate so much the benefits of healthcare. Quality healthcare. Yes, you might have to wait a little while, but no one's expecting. You can't be expecting heaven on earth. But honestly, for us, this has been pretty darn close. It's so beautiful, and it's the incredible generosity of people here as well. You can find just somebody says, there's a new family, there's an immigrant family, or there's a single mom who has to start afresh or something, just, that is just so beautiful. I love how a lot of Canadian people are just so wanting other people to succeed and, do well. Just that is a beautiful thing. Wanting your neighbor to do well.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're just so happy here. This is such a great place to raise kids. Such a great place. There's so much good that Canada has, and we're just so thankful to be a part of it, and hopefully be raising kids that can do good for other people as well, give other people a leg up,
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you for sharing your story, Sheena. Thank you for giving us a little bit of a history lesson at the start of the episode about the apartheid. I really appreciated that, actually. And just thank you for being on the show today. It was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching this episode. Immigrants of Canada is financially funded by people like you. If you feel led to contribute financially, please visit www.immigrantofcanada.com/donate. If you like this episode, please remember to subscribe to this channel so that you can continue hearing more inspiring immigrant stories. Thanks, and we'll see you in the next episode.